Vedic Vision, the whole group, welcome. From today, my channel will be called Vedic Vision and it will be connected to the Vedic Vision group. So, Vedic Vision, here we come. Satyaji has given me this. We have decided to make only one channel instead of two. And today we have a very surprising guest with us. Sir James Braha, welcome. Namaste, sir.
Thank you.
So, I don't think so, Sir Sergi needs an introduction, but those who are new to his name, James Sir is into astrology for more than 40 years. He was a pioneer to take the Hindu works and Hindu Vedic texts to the Westerners, teach them this astrology in a simplified manner. He has written 6 books in his name, which are world famous and which are best selling books in astrology today. Even in India, if you go to Amazon, just type James Braha and you will get all his 6 books. Sir, it is a pleasure. I read it on your Facebook and everything that a new book, you have just now written a new book. Can we know more about this book?
Okay. Well, it's what it is when I went to India in 1982
Yes.
and then 1984, and around 1985 I wrote the original book, Ancient Hindu Astrology for the Modern Western Astrologer.
Yes.
But as the years went by, I found that there was a lot of techniques that didn't work the way I thought they should work, and over the years, I learned a lot more. I wrote a second book on Jyotish called The Art and Practice of Ancient Hindu Astrology,
Thanks.
and then a year ago, I started revising the original book, and
Yes.
I added 200 pages. I added 200 pages. It's in a certain way it's like the same book, and in a certain way it's completely different. This is what it looks like. It's called Revised and Expanded 2020 Ancient Hindu Astrology for the Modern Western Astrologer.
Yes,
The
Ancient
main
Hindu Astrology. Guys, go and check out this book by Sir. It is it is a great book as it is a revised version of whatever Sir has learnt over the 40 years. So you all can understand the work that has gone in this book.
But make sure that you see the words revised and expanded, because
Correct.
the old book is there as well.
As well.
So I found that there was, you know, a lot of the problem in the original book was that I'd been practicing Western astrology for 4 or 5 years, and then Hindu Vedic for, 2, 3 years. So I trusted everything. But in particular, when I wrote about the eighth house and the 12th house, I did like the Indians do. The eighth house is terrible and the 12th house is terrible. Well, the eighth house is astrology and psychic matters and longevity and sexual attractiveness. And the 12th house is moksha. But you don't see this in most of the books. So that's over the decades, the part that always bothered me was that if people read their planets in their houses, you know, clients would come to me thinking that their lives would be terrible because they had planets in the eighth house. Well, that's why they're coming.
Yes.
That's why they're interested in astrology. So anyway, so okay, let's move on to the subject of the day. I have not prepared anything in particular, but I said I would come and talk about marriage, and if there's time, maybe about career as well.
Sure.
So it's very everything in astrology is complicated. There's so many elements. I'm writing a book now called Vedic Astrology, the Braha Sutras, the
Right.
Braha Sutras,
That
and
is.
one of the sutras is that the karaka of a house can completely mitigate whatever else is going on. I tell the story. I tell the story of this woman who had a terrible fifth house, and the fifth house ruler was terrible. There was nothing good for children, and she had great experience with children. It was the Karaka, Jupiter, it was highly exalted and aspected by a full moon. So the Karaka can alter what you're looking at in the horoscope. And this is critical. So there's so many facets. Let me say this also, that one of the sutras in this new book, the book is not out, it'll be out in 3-4 months or whatever, but uh, these sutras, one of them is about only use what works 7 out of 10 times. If a technique doesn't work 6 or 7 out of 10 times, get rid of it.
Yeah.
Vargotama does not work for me. There's a bunch that don't work. If they don't work, you get rid of them. But there's one feature. It's not even 7 and 10. It's 10 out of 10 for marriage. It works better than anything connected to the 7th house. It's when a planet sits 7 houses away from the moon.
Okay.
That planet is going to function more perfectly than a planet in the 7th house. That's how accurate it is. There's nothing in astrology that I have not seen fail. Everything I've seen in astrology, it works, and then you find one time when it doesn't work. But if Venus is 7 houses away from the moon, the partner is going to be artistic or romantic or beautiful. If Saturn is 7 houses away from the moon, there's going to be problems. If Mars is 7 houses away from the moon, there will be fighting. It always works. In fact, one of the things that I sometimes say is that I don't get that much results from Chandra Lagna. I've tried Chandra Lagna looking at the 10th house from the moon and the 5th house from the moon, along with the natal chart, along with the Bhava chart. Chandra Lagna is not great for me, but a planet opposite the moon is 100%. And in fact, I have a theory. Thousands of years ago, they saw how accurate a planet was 7 houses away from the moon. So they said it must be that the whole horoscope works like that. That's my theory, only because I don't get that much from Chandra Lagna. But I'm telling you, a planet 7 houses away from the moon, you can bet on it. You can bet on
Sir,
it.
what if there is no planet in the 7th house?
The closer it is by degree, the stronger it will be. If the moon is 3 degrees Leo and Jupiter is 27 Aquarius, you'll still get a Jupiterian partner. But if the moon is 3 degrees Leo and Jupiter is 5 degrees Aquarius, it's going to be even stronger. Well, so yeah, planets, if there's not a planet in the 7th house, that's just part of the 7th house we're going to talk about now. Okay. So.
No, I meant what if there is no planet in 7 to the moon?
Yeah, then you're just going by the regular 7th house and the Navamsha.
Okay.
Now, one of the sutras that I just got through writing has to do with the when you have the 7th house ruler, if you have the 7th house ruler in the 12th house, then that's going to cause problems, but you should get a partner who is involved in enlightenment, moksha. Okay? So there's different ways to deal with the 7th house ruler. If it's in the 8th house, it's going to be a divorce, or the 12th house, it's going to be a divorce, or in areas where they don't divorce, it'll just be problems. But if you get a partner that's where you have the 7th house ruler in the 8th house, then you try for a partner who is astrological, psychic, metaphysical. If the ruler of the 7th is in the 12th house, you go for someone pursuing moksha, pursuing enlightenment. But one of the sutras is about what happens when the natal 7th house is very bad, but the Navamsha 7th house is very good. What happens? So in my experience, what happens there, I consider the Navamsha to be very specifically about marriage. Of course, the 7th house and Venus also is very specifically about marriage. But what usually happens if the natal horoscope is bad for marriage, but the Navamsha is very good, then usually the person has a divorce and then eventually they have a good marriage. Now, this is for places over here where there's divorces. And if the natal chart is good for marriage and the Navamsha is bad, then what you have to worry about is everything feels good. We've known each other for 2 years. Then they get married and the problems begin. That's what can happen. Now, when it comes to the divisional horoscopes, the Varga charts, I found about 2 years into my practice, I don't know, I can't remember exactly, 2-3 years into my practice, I found that the Varga charts did not work for me when I used them as a whole chart. In other words, if the career chart had a bunch of planets in the 6th house, I thought, oh, and a really strong 6th house, oh, that person will be in medicine. But I didn't find that to be accurate. What I found was using the 10th house of the career chart, only the 10th house. What planet's in the 10th house, where the 10th house ruler is, that would tell me about career. So for marriage in the Navamsha, I didn't look at the whole chart. I didn't care if Saturn's in the 4th house or Mars is in the 5th. I didn't find it accurate. What I find accurate is what planet is in the 7th house. That's going to be important. And where is the 7th house ruler? That's it. You don't use aspects in the Varga charts. Some people might, but you shouldn't. So in the Varga chart, in the Navamsha chart, I just look at the 7th house. If the 7th house ruler is in the 11th, then the marriage partner is going to be a friend, or they'll be very wealthy. I had an inquiry the other day. This man wanted a horoscope for his wife, but they couldn't decide whether it was 0 Pisces or 29 Aquarius. And using the Pisces, I saw the ruler of the 7th house was in the 11th. I said, is the partner a friend? And he said, we were friends for years before we got married. So it's one of the things. If the 7th house ruler is in the 1st, there's a very strong connection. The ruler of the partner is in the house of the person. So that's either in the Navamsha or the natal chart. If the 7th ruler is in the 2nd house, the partner is either a teacher or they are wealthy. If the 7th ruler is in the 3rd house, they may be an artist, they may be in computers, or they just may be very, very energetic. Okay. What was I going to say? So depending upon where the 7th house ruler is, that's going to tell you a lot. You also, of course, look for Kuja dosha, Mangal dosh, Mangalik. In the Western world, so this is Mars in the 1st, 4th, 7th, 8th, or 12th house. That's about 40% of the people. When I was in India the first time, I didn't know that I would find an astrology teacher, but I was studying Western, and people said, are you going to study Jyotish? And I said, well, if it's possible, I will, but I don't know. I've seen the books, and you couldn't learn from them. But I brought 25 horoscopes with me in case I found a teacher. I was there 3 months, and 2 weeks before I was getting ready to leave, that's when I found a teacher. And I extended my stay for another 4 weeks. We studied 2-3 hours a night for 6 weeks. But after about 10 days, we're looking at charts every night of my family and friends and relatives and friends. And he said, doesn't anybody in America have happy family life? So I have this theory that if you're born in India and you have Kuja dosha, then they arrange a marriage with another Kuja dosha and the karma gets postponed. So then you get born in America. Then you have Kuja dosha and you get no help. Now, when I tell people, I basically tell people in the West that if they have Kuja dosha, not to marry in the first 27, 28 years. Wait. Now, sometimes people think that means that Kuja dosha stops being accurate after the age of 30. No, it means that when you get to 28, 29, 30, you start using your brain and you say, every time I go for somebody that I'm attracted to, it doesn't work. I'm going to choose somebody who is good for me. Now, something very important. This is one of the sutras in the Braha Sutra book that's going to come out later. One of the sutras is, do not use Kuja dosha or Mangal dosh in the Navamsha. Do not use Kuja dosha or Mangal dosh in the Chandra Lagna chart. Kuja dosha exists in almost 40% of charts if you're using just the natal chart. If you add the Navamsha, you're going to have 75 or 80% of all the people having it. And there's some astrologers that use it from the moon, Chandra Lagna, from the Navamsha, from the natal chart. This is basic common sense. Okay. So if you have Kuja dosha and you choose a partner who also has it, the attraction will not be so strong. The chemistry will not be so strong, but you'll have a happy marriage. Now, you can't marry somebody, at least in my culture, you can't marry somebody where there's not some attraction. You need some glue in case when problems come. The glue is that you have some attraction to them. But it's it'll be a little bit less. Now, if Saturn is in the 7th house of the natal chart or the Navamsha, there's going to be karma. There's going to be problems. In those cases, I also would prefer the person gets married later. But what usually will happen, there's one of two very typical responses. One is the person gets married and the partner treats them horribly. The partner takes and takes and takes, and the person gives and gives and gives. And the two different responses are, the person will say, yes, I had a marriage, it lasted a year. Oh. They got the heck out because they were being treated terribly. Then you have people that say, it was terrible. And I say, well, how long? 30 years. And I said, it was bad for 30 years. It was terrible for 30. So you get some people that stay in a bad relationship forever, and you get some that get the heck out. Now, if Saturn's in the 7th house, you want to ideally find a partner that is older, that's Saturn, or the person is worshiping Lord Shiva, meditating, detached from the world, non-attached. There's 3 different ways of seeing enlightenment, which path someone takes. If Mercury is conjunct the sun, the moon, the ascendant, or the ascendant ruler, the person's going to be moved by Advaita, where the truth sets you free. That's one spiritual path. If Jupiter is aspecting the ascendant, the sun, the moon, or the ascendant ruler, then Krishna and devotion is the spiritual path. If Saturn is aspecting the person's personal planets, then the person is a Shivite. So with Saturn in the 7th house, you try to find a partner that is thin. They don't care about the world. They don't care about money. They care, but they're detached from the world, like that. Now, of course, the marriage is not going to be, the person's not going to be warm and effusive and gushing, but there's plenty of people that are Saturnian that, also want to be married, so that's important.
But they are very stable and very, Saturn will give that quality of stability.
Responsive. They are very responsible.
Yeah.
Now, another sutra that I wrote in my book, because it took me a long time to figure these out. When I came back from India, if I saw a fallen planet in the 7th house or the 7th house from the moon, I would say there will be marriage. So if the sun was in Libra in the 7th or the 7th from the moon, there would be marriage problems. If Mars is in Cancer in the 7th or 7th from the moon, there will be marriage problems. If Saturn is in the 7th, there'll be
Aries.
Fall Aries. But after some years, what I noticed was there's a huge problem. There will be marriage problems. There's a huge personality problem with the other person. In other words, if Mars has fallen in the seventh or the seventh from the moon, the other person is angry. They have problems. If Mercury is fallen in the seventh house, it's in Pisces in the seventh or seventh from the moon, the person is mentally unstable. In other words, when a person has a fallen planet 7 houses away from the moon, what I say to the client is, have you had partners that have really big problems? I don't say, oh, have you had marriage difficulties? I know they've had marriage difficulties, but I say specifically, have you had partners where everybody looks at that person and they say, wow, something's wrong with them? It's just a matter of accuracy. You'll be accurate when you say that. Generally, I don't like planets in the seventh house. Generally, I don't like the sun in the seventh house because it makes the partner bossy and strong-willed, and it makes a problem with the dowry or a problem with the religion. There's something that interferes, but mainly it makes the partner bossy. And the person with the sun in the seventh house has a terrible time being alone. Someone with the seventh house gets divorced, they jump into a relationship. They get divorced, they jump into a relationship. They can't, because the sun is the Atmakaraka, the indicator of the soul. And the soul is in the house of marriage. So they have to be married. And you have to warn them. If you have a divorce, if you have a breakup, take some time. Learn to be alone before you choose again. If Mars is in the seventh house, there's going to be fighting or friction, almost certainly. There'll always be issues. If Rahu or Ketu is in the seventh house, there'll be ups and downs, always something to talk about. The people wake up in the morning, they start bickering and arguing about this, that, or the other thing. Now, that's not a big problem. They're not fighting. They're just saying, hey, I like the window open. Why do you like to close it? And it goes on. So that's not a big problem as long as you understand you won't have a smooth relationship. If it's Mars, it's a problem. You're going to be fighting. If it's Rahu or Ketu, then it's going to be issues and little things to deal with. Rahu means the partner can be intense or smothering or domineering. Ketu means the partner can be alcohol, drugs, illusion, deception.
Alcohol.
They could also, but alcohol, drugs, illusion, deception, Ketu.
Ketu.
Now, if I see Ketu in the seventh house, I tell the person, you must find someone psychic and metaphysical. These terms that I use are very specific. If I say metaphysical, I don't mean spiritual. If I say spiritual, I don't mean metaphysical. Spiritual means wanting moksha, wanting enlightenment. Metaphysical means I'm interested in the psychic, what's going on underneath the surface. Yeah. So if Ketu's in the seventh house, I say you must be careful, make sure the person is shy, introverted, introspective, psychic, metaphysical. The person may not be alcoholic, but after you marry them, they could drift towards that. It's possible. So you have to be a little bit careful. When I came back from India, I heard astrologers complain a little bit about Venus in the seventh house. It's too much. And I thought, oh, that's crazy. Over here, we love passion. It's a problem. Venus in the seventh house, even in America, is a problem. It creates too much passion so that there may be extramarital love affairs. It's too, it's a funny thing, but marriage is about compromise. Marriage is about a day-to-day existence. When you put Venus in the seventh house, it's, I have to have passion. Every day I have to have passion and excitement. It's just too much. And I noticed this also when I saw people that had Venus conjunct Pluto. If Pluto is next to a planet, I know not all astrologers use Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto. The ancients knew about Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto, but they couldn't see them. So they didn't want to use them unless they could see them. But they still work. And usually, like if Pluto is conjunct the sun, the person has power and intensity. If Pluto is conjunct the moon, there's big, deep emotion. But Pluto conjunct Venus causes all kinds of problems when it's close. The person is way too sensitive. They're good artistically, but they're way too sensitive, and it harms their life. And I came to realize Venus wants to be a little bit superficial. In other words, you don't want too much intensity with Venus for married life, and you don't want too much intensity with the seventh house. So I don't like the sun in the seventh. I don't like Venus in the seventh. Saturn and Mars, I don't like in the seventh. Rahu and Ketu, I don't. Now, the ones I like would be Moon or Jupiter. The Moon in the seventh house means that the person who has the Moon in the seventh house is going to be deeply, deeply, deeply committed to that marriage. Even if the marriage is bad, they will stay in it for a long time because the Moon is, it's an emotional,
Compassion, emotions.
it's, yeah, yeah. Um, and uh, so the Moon gives a lot of empathy, not just for the marriage partner, but for other people in general. When you see people with Jupiter and Moon in the seventh house, they make the best counselors. They're very, they're very compassionate. um, Jupiter in the seventh house makes the person very aware of other people's feelings. Jupiter in the seventh house, you get a partner that is ethical and moral and spiritual. These are, by the way, considering that the planets aren't aspected badly. I'm just talking about the planet alone.
Yes.
When Jupiter is in the seventh house, the person is so aware of other people's feelings. It's wonderful to be around them. Um, that person, even if their married life is difficult because of Mangal dosh or something else, if they have Jupiter in the seventh house and they see someone and they go, that's the partner I want, they will get that partner very easily, very easily, very easily. Um, so the Moon and Jupiter are really the only ones that I particularly like in the seventh house because marriage is day to day compromise, getting along. You don't need, this, you don't need too much intensity there.
So this is seventh house from the moon or from the ascendant?
Both,
Both.
both,
Okay.
both. I, the the seventh house from the Moon is even more consistent. Sometimes, look, nothing in astrology works all the time. I've
Right.
seen sometimes once and not, once in a while, you'll see a planet in a 10th house or seventh. It just doesn't work. I'm telling you, when it's 7 houses away from the Moon, I've never had a client say, if I say Saturn's in the seventh from the Moon, so you have, they treat you badly. Venus is in the seventh house from the Moon. They're an artist or they're romantic. They've never said no. That is extremely, extremely rare. Extremely rare. But I'm telling you, it's just one of those things. Um, I'm trying to think of what I can say about relationships that you don't already know. Uh, the the moon in the first house can make a person having so much attention on themselves that it sometimes can harm married life just because they're very moody and things like that. But I don't know. The seventh house is, fairly straightforward.
Yes.
Uh,
So are there any yogas that you see in a chart? This is a long-lasting marriage, or this marriage might break off, something like that. Any particular sutras that you have found out over the years?
I don't really use yogas very much. I find yogas that they work sometimes and then sometimes they don't work. And when I was in India, both times, the astrologers would come up with some statement that would be very accurate, and I would say, why? Why is that? And they would give some explanation, and I would say that's just psychic. And I believe that, or they would see a yoga. You know, there was one chart I remember. I don't remember too much with yogas, but I remember this one. I was with Santanam. Santanam was the translator of a lot of those texts. He
Yes.
was just beginning to get famous when I met him. And one night we were looking at a horoscope of this girl that I knew in college, and he said, "Oh, she'll be wealthy." I said, "Why?" The second house wasn't anything good, and he said she has Lakshmi yoga. If a planet is in the second, the sixth, the eighth, and the 12th house, the person has Lakshmi yoga. There's no logic to this. The second, the sixth, the eighth, and the 12th, if they have that, the person will be wealthy. But I seriously doubt that if I got 10 charts that had that, I, I doubt that seven of them would be wealthy. So I think it's just a guess. Now, some yogas, obviously, if Jupiter is four houses away from the moon, that's going to be some yoga. If there's all kinds of yogas, if the moon is hemmed in by malefics, that's going to be a yoga. But I don't need to hear the name of the yoga and read about it. I know from common sense.
Right.
It's these odd yogas. But I also remember, oh gosh, he was good with yogas, Santanam, because one day, oh, and that woman was wealthy, by the way. She was wealthy, and but there was another one where he said that this man will have a mellifluous voice. My jaw dropped because this man was a phenomenal voice singer. He
Yes.
wasn't a singer by profession, but he
I,
should have been. He should have been. But uh, sometimes I, sometimes you have, if you're not looking at Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto, you're going to miss things. If you have Venus conjunct Uranus tight, there's going to be numerous marriages or numerous relationships.
yes.
If you have Uranus in the seventh house, numerous relationships. But I forgot to say this. I want to talk about Mercury for a minute. Westerners don't talk about Mercury being fickle. Mercury is fickle. Mercury in the seventh house, I do not like. Why? The partner can be superficial. The partner can be fickle. The partner would be brilliant and intellectual,
Right.
brilliant and intellectual. And there will be a wonderful communication between the two partners, but there's not enough glue. Now, if Mercury's in the seventh house and the ruler of the seventh house is 2 degrees away from Venus or Jupiter, that's fantastic. Or Moon, because then you have something really good connected to the marriage because of the ruler. But it has to be really good. Otherwise, Mercury's going to take over. And Mercury and the moon, both, they are dual. They are waxing and
Correct.
waning. They are
Correct.
numerous. Okay. So I do find that a lot of people with Mercury in the seventh house or Mercury in the seventh house from the moon, they may have two great loves in their life.
Okay.
They may have two great loves. Even if they only have one marriage, they could have. The Mercury does that. But that's something that is not taught enough over here in the West by Jyotishis that I know of, is that if a planet is near, if you're dealing with the moon or Mercury, if it's in the house of children, moon or Mercury alone could give more than one child because Mercury is dual and because moon is waxing and waning. Like,
Ach,
yeah,
that's something.
uh, yeah,
Mercury we consider as dual planet. So if Mercury is connected with Saturn, more than one profession, all that comes up. This is Nadi astrology that we do. Mercury with Venus, Mercury with Saturn will give more than one way of earnings
yeah, yeah,
and all such things.
yeah. And the in the books it'll say the karaka for the career: sun, Jupiter, Saturn, Mercury. It lists like 4 planets. I remember when I learned this, I said, this is insane. I have the 10th house. I have the ruler of the 10th house. I have the Dasamsha chart. And now I have 4 Karakas. But so the Karaka for a career really is Saturn. But there is a point to this, because when you're looking at career, you cannot just look at the 10th house. The entire chart comes into play. The entire chart comes into play. I mean, it is certainly possible. I've seen charts where a person loves to be investing and speculating, or they love real estate, but the career is clearly mechanical, technical. I've seen charts like that. But I've seen plenty of charts where the career is indicated to be one thing, but the rest of the chart all goes in a different direction, and they follow that direction, you know. And if the ruler of the 10th, so if the ruler of the 10th house, now talking about career a little bit, if the ruler of the 10th house is in the 8th, then you want to have a career that is research oriented, that is behind the scenes, that is metaphysical, astrological. Otherwise, there can be some problems in the career. Not as bad as the 12th house, in my experience. When the ruler of the 10th is in the 12th, numerous careers, changes of career, having a career that you might have wanted to do, but something got in the way, karmic debts chasing you in the career. Now, it depends how bad it is. Let's say the ruler of the 10th is in the 12th and it's aspected by Saturn. Let's say the ruler of the 10th is in the 12th and it's fallen. Now it's not just confusion of career or numerous careers, it's big problems in the career. So in those cases, it becomes very, very, very karmic. In the Dasamsha chart, a lot of times I'll be looking at the natal chart, the planets in the 10th house, the ruler of the 10th house, where that occupies, and how it's aspected. Then I go to the Dasamsha chart. In the Dasamsha chart, if the ruler of the 6th is in the 10th, it might be medicine, or the ruler of the 10th in the 6th might be medicine. If the 5th ruler is in the 10th, it might be investments, or 10th ruler in the 5th, it might be investments or children. There's certain places that give me very little information. If the ruler of the 10th is in the 11th, what does it tell me? The partner, the profession could be with friends and groups. And it is. Oftentimes it is a profession with groups, but it's very little information. It doesn't tell me the kind of profession.
Right.
Sometimes it just means a person wants to make large sums of money. If the ruler of the 10th house is in the 1st house, it doesn't tell me much. The career is connected to the physical presence. Well, that'll be the case if the person's an artist, they're using their physical presence, or a coach or an astrologer or something, but it doesn't give me a lot of information. Whereas if the 10th ruler is in the 2nd house, I know it's a teacher or someone making money. If it's the 10th ruler in the 4th house, it's real estate, land. 10th ruler in the 7th house, it's business or doing a career with a partner, with the marriage partner, things like that. Now, if the 10th ruler is in the 12th, or if there's any connection between the 12th and the 12th ruler aspects the 10th ruler, you want to advise the person to do a consciousness-raising career. Now, consciousness-raising career specifically is astrology, yoga, meditation. Those are specifically spiritual consciousness-raising careers. But any career where you are teaching people something that they wouldn't already know, that they won't find out elsewhere, that is raising consciousness. So a lot of times a person can be a counselor, a therapist. I think they don't have those so much in India.
They have, sir. They have.
They have, but people too many of the Indians that I have met, clients, if you tell them you need help, you need to go for counseling, they think it means they're crazy.
Right.
That's that's what I mean.
But it is changing now. People
Good, good.
people are now more aware that even mental health is most important and they need
Yeah,
to take care of it.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Um, so so also if the 10th ruler and the 12th ruler are connected, you have to tell the person, do not be looking for one dharma. You will not have one, you have numerous dharmas. Enjoy having numerous dharmas.
Right.
Now, many times, many times, if there is a problem with the career, the 10th ruler tightly conjunct Ketu. Now, the 10th ruler tightly conjunct Ketu could be a spiritual metaphysical career, a career in oil or gas, right?
Right.
But it's also very karmic. It's kind of like having the 10th ruler in the 12th or the 8th. So a lot of times what you will find when the 10th ruler is really tightly aspected with the 12th or really tightly with the 8th or the Ketu, a lot of times the person will have some enormous talent in the horoscope, enormous talent, and they love it and they're better than anybody and they cannot do it as a career.
Okay.
So what you're seeing is the horoscope is showing you the Ketu career or the 12th house career, whatever it is. It may show you that, but it's showing you that they have karmic debt with the career, and then you will notice a talent that is just enormous. So you're actually seeing them play out. They would love to do that other thing as a career. They can't. Something gets in the way every time they try to do that other, something stops it, gets in the way. They're playing out their karma. And it's showing you. It's fascinating to me when that happens.
So that singer, did he have this combination? A very good singer, but he was not following singing. He should have been a singer. You just told me.
Yeah, instead he was in oil.
All right. Yeah. So,
But he had a voice. He had a voice. He had a voice. When he was 18 or 19, he was studying voice with this man in California. As soon as the teacher heard his voice, he said, in November, we're going to go to New York to the Metropolitan Opera. They have a competition every year. You're going to win that competition beyond a doubt.
Acha.
So what did my friend do?
Yeah.
He left the teacher.
Oh,
Any 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 time that something good was going to happen,
then
something would
come up.
it would be, yeah, he got scared and left. Who knows? It was like that. So he was in oil. But you'll see that. You will see they have a great talent, but it cannot be used because the chart is showing you that they have the 10th ruler is fallen, or
Some
something
sort.
like that. Um, so Mars is going to be mechanical technical, which means computers, engineering, things like that. Law. Law will be Mars and Jupiter, and sports will be Mars and Jupiter, both. You need both. For sports, you need the fifth house and Mars and Jupiter for sports. And for law, it would be the ninth house and Jupiter and
Okay.
Mars. Like that. Those are, and a lot of times, I've seen a lot of horoscopes where I can see law is in the horoscope, but I can see that it's not going to make them happy.
Acha.
And they'll say, "Yeah, I became a lawyer. I hated it." And then there's others where you'll see that they actually could enjoy it.
So, what are the differences between these two?
Between what?
Between one who will enjoy lawyers, one who enjoy being into.
I don't remember the specifics.
Okay.
I can't remember it. You would look at the chart and you would see Mars is very strong, but it's with the moon, which means that the moon is having trouble. I don't remember the specifics, but I'll have to look at, for when that happens again.
Right.
Um, and then there's also that sometimes I'll see law, right, very strongly, but I will see another house where you have great benefics. So I say you could do law, but
Can you do
you're going
doing
to
this?
love real estate because Jupiter, Moon, and Venus are in the fourth. That's part of it. Uh, if you see another part of the horoscope that's so wonderful, it doesn't matter that they have the, you know,
Right. Right, sir. Great. Very beautiful tips today. I love the part of seventh from the moon. That was a wonderful session.
it is 100%. It's
100.
one of the few features I've never seen it fail.
Right.
Seen it fail. But I've seen all the others fail. God, I remember once in the early days of astrology, I was giving a workshop. Maybe I had been doing it a year or two, something like that. And I put charts on the board. I put people's charts on the board, and this guy had Saturn in the seventh house, and it may have even been in Fallen or something. I mean, it was very bad. And he said, "No, we've been married for 35 years. It's been great." And I would start questioning the birth time, and the birth time would be great. There's always, once in a while, it doesn't happen a lot, but once in a while, something is there and it just doesn't fit.
Great.
Now, back then, back then, I probably didn't know how strong the planet opposite the moon was. It's quite possible that he had Venus or Jupiter opposite the moon,
Right.
exalted, maybe Jupiter in Cancer opposite the moon. Who knows? So that's possible. But there's always something, but not this one. It's
Yes.
opposite the moon.
Seventh opposite. Yes. Thank you, sir. Thank you. It was a great session.
My
Uh,
pleasure.
yeah, and very simple. I know most of your lessons and everything is astrology simplified. That's what we have got the feedback. Like the books are also very simple. Guys, go and check out Sir's books. I'll be giving his link of YouTube channel in my description box. Check out his YouTubes also. They are simply filled with knowledge about astrology. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Hope to see you soon.
Okay. My pleasure.
Thank you. Thank you, sir.